right. I am calling the meeting to order. It is 3:32 p.m. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for attending the Wednesday, March 9th, 2022 meeting of the Free City College Oversight Committee. My name is Eileen Mariano. I'm with the Mayor's Office. I wanted to, first of all, just start by saying thank you to our previous co-chairs, Jenny Lamb and Chanel Williams, for holding this position for as long as they did. The legislation states that the co-chair positions are designated as the president of the Board of Trustees of City College and the mayor's chair. So Chair Davila and I will be taking on that role. So is Chair Davila with us today? I don't see her.
She should be joining.
Okay. Hopefully she joins soon. I was gonna let her introduce herself, but hopefully she pops on here soon. So with that, one other thing, Director Sue and I, unfortunately, are going to have to step out of this meeting for just a very brief amount of time. And so apologies in advance for that, but we will be as quick as we can and just be gone for a few moments. So with that, Jay, can you please take the roll call?
Apologies, I just got a call from Chair Davila. We need to send her a Zoom link. So if Rebecca or Jasmine, you can do that. So before we have a roll call, there are a few announcements. Due to the COVID-19 health emergency and to protect Free City College Oversight Committee members, city, and the public, members and employees will be participating in the meeting remotely. This precaution is taken pursuant to various local, state, and federal orders, declarations, and directives. Committee members and employees will attend the meeting through video conference and participate in the meeting to the same extent as if they were physically present. For all members and employees participating in this Zoom meeting, we ask that you mute yourselves when you're not speaking. This will help reduce background noise. When you would like to speak, please select raise hand and wait to be introduced. Please remember to unmute yourselves before you speak. Public comment will be available for each item on this agenda. Each speaker will be allowed 2 minutes to speak. Comments or opportunities to speak during the public comment period are available via Zoom and by phone. For Zoom users, from your screen, select raise hand and wait to be introduced. For phone users who called in, press *9 to raise your hand on the phone and wait to be introduced. You will be added to the queue to speak. Please wait until it is your turn to speak. When it's time for you to speak, you'll be brought into the conversation by the Zoom administrator. Please state your name, and of course, you have the right to remain anonymous if you choose. You will have the standard 2 minutes to provide your comments. For Zoom users, there will be a timer on the screen. For phone users, we will give you a prompt that sounds like this. And you will have 30 seconds remaining. While you are waiting, you will be able to watch and listen to the meeting. From the phone, the system will notify you when you're online and waiting. All callers will remain on mute until their line is open. All speakers, please account for the time delays and speaking discrepancies between live coverage and streaming. Best practices are to call from a quiet location, speak clearly and slowly, and turn down any television or radio background sounds. This meeting will be recorded and posted on DCYF's website. So the first item on the agenda is call to order and roll call. So members, please unmute yourselves. Chair Eileen Mariano.
Here.
We'll come back to Chair Davila as we try to get her online. Member Nikki Hatfield. Member Win Monchi.
Yes, present.
Member Angelica Campos.
Present.
Member Supervisor Gordon Marr.
Present.
Member Jennifer Fong.
Present.
Member Calvin Kwok. Member Maria Sue,
Present.
Member Lisa Cooper Wilkins,
Present.
Member Alyssa Misser,
Present.
Member Christopher Brody,
Present.
Member Tyler Wu,
Present.
Member Connie Ford,
Present.
Member Molinari Villalobos, Chair Mariano, we do have quorum.
Great, thank you, Jay. So let's move on to the second item, which is adoption of the agenda. Please take a minute to review the agenda on the screen. Do any of the committee members have any questions on this item?
Madam Chair, can you
Yeah.
hear me? This is Connie. I just was reviewing the minutes from our last meeting, and one of the action items said that points of contact with City College would be included either in this meeting or at least verbally. And it's called an action item in the minutes, and I'm just wondering, is that on this agenda for today?
I don't see it on the agenda. Do you mind just saying more about what you mean about points of contact?
It wasn't my point. I was just
Oh.
reading it and it said action item. So somebody else brought it up and it was in our minutes of last meeting.
Jay, do you know?
Is this a question about whether or not there are specific contacts for this committee with, for City College? Is that what's in?
That's my assumption. Yes.
Okay, we don't have it on the agenda, but we can definitely discuss that in the, we can fold that into the future agenda items. We can provide some context there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any
Oh,
other-
actually, we have, sorry, we have an update from City College and the Free City College update, and City College can provide that information there as well.
Okay.
Great. Do any other committee members have questions on this item? Are there any public comments?
Anthony, are there any speakers in the queue?
There are no speakers in the queue.
Great, seeing none, public comment is closed.
Thank you, Jay. Is there a motion for approval of the agenda?
A motion to approve.
Second?
Second, this is Maria.
Great. Jay, can you please take a roll call vote?
We will now take a vote to approve the adoption of agenda. Chair Mariano,
Yes.
Member Hatfield, Member Chi,
Yes.
Member Campos,
Yes.
Member Mar,
Yes.
Member Fong,
Yes.
Member Kwok,
Yes.
Member Sue,
Yes.
Member Wilkins,
Yes.
Member Messer,
Abstain.
Member Brody,
Yes.
Member Wu,
Yes.
Member Ford,
Yes.
Member Villalobos. Motion passes. Um,
Go ahead.
It looks like Member Messer has a question or a comment.
Apologies, I went ahead and lowered my hand.
Okay.
No worries. All right, on to the next agenda item, which is item number 3, general public comment. Jay, can you see if there are any public comments?
Okay, so members of the public may address the Free City College Oversight Committee on items of interest to the public that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Oversight Committee. With respect to agenda items, members of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes at the time such item is called. Is there any public comment for items not listed on the agenda? Anthony, do we have any members of the public?
There are no speakers in the queue.
Okay. Seeing none, public comment is closed.
Great. Our next agenda item is item number 5, the resolution to allow teleconference meetings under California Government Code Section 54953E. Under the Mayor's July 31st, 2020 order, policy bodies may meet remotely without advance approval from the mayor or the Board of Supervisors. But beginning on October 1st, 2021, policy bodies must regularly adopt findings to continue holding remote meetings. Under normal circumstances, the Brown Act imposes special requirements for remote teleconference meetings, including requirements to provide special notice to the public and to allow members of the public to attend each teleconference location and observe each policy body member at the location calling into the meeting. AB 361 suspends those requirements if the governor has proclaimed a state of emergency, provided that the policy body makes certain findings. Specifically, to invoke AB 361's provisions, so long as the governor's emergency proclamation remains in effect, a policy body must make 2 findings at least once every 30 days. 1, it has considered or reconsidered the circumstances of the state of emergency, and either 2, the state of emergency continues to directly impact the ability of policy body members to meet safely in person, or state or local officials continue to impose or recommend measures to promote social distancing. Are there any committee member questions on this item? Are there any public comments?
Anthony, are there any speakers in the queue?
There are no speakers in the queue.
Great. Seeing none, public comment is closed.
Thank you, Jay. Do I have a motion for adoption of the resolution?
This is Maria. I'll second Member Messer's motion.
Great. Jay, can you please take a roll call vote?
We'll now take a vote to approve the adoption of the resolution. Chair Mariano,
Yes.
Member Hatfield, Member Key, Member Campos,
Yes, sorry.
Member Mar,
Yes.
Member Fong,
Yes.
Member Kwok,
Yes.
Member Sue,
Yes.
Member Wilkins,
Yes.
Member Messer,
Yes.
Member Brody,
Yes.
Member Wu,
Yes.
Member Ford,
Yes.
Member Villalobos. And the motion passes.
Thank you, Jay. Unfortunately, this is the time that Member Sue and I need to step out. So I'll go ahead and just turn the camera off and mute myself. I'm hoping that the co-chair is able to, co-chair Davila is able to log on as soon as possible.
Chair Mariano, can you kick off this agenda item so we can do
Sure.
it?
Yeah, absolutely. The next item on the agenda is item 4, approval of the minutes from the January 2022 meeting. Please take a minute to review if needed. Jay, can I hand it to you?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll be back as soon as we can.
So are there any questions on this item while you're reviewing? Yes, Member Messer.
Yeah, I just wanted to notice again, we have a number of action items and we have things about future agenda items that again, I feel pretty strongly that we're missing a lot of the continuity from the work that we have done in the committee. So I know I've said this before, and I know we're in a pandemic and this stuff is hard, but when we look at the minutes, every time we're reminded of the things we said we would do that we're not currently doing. And I just want to encourage us all to see if we can figure out how to get more continuity going with the committee, especially I'm so glad that we're meeting as quickly as we could. It wasn't a month, but it was very close. And this just seemed like the opportune moment to make that statement yet again. Thank you.
And just as a follow-up, maybe something that we can do to aggregate all the requests is for the next meeting for us to lay out all the action items that have been listed out so that we can, 1, see what we might be missing, and then 2, be able to prioritize what we want to see in the next meeting so that we can hold ourselves accountable here.
Okay, we can definitely do that on our end at ECYF, just kind of go through those minutes and try to aggregate that information. Thank you.
So Jay, this is Connie again. I brought up last meeting, like sort of an in-depth study of outstanding fees by students. And I'm just going to assume that we're going to talk about that, where it says update from City College and future, I'm sorry, where it says use of free City College funds. Is that right? Is that where that discussion should be?
Yes, that'll come up during that discussion, and
Okay.
this won't be the only discussion we have around the use of those funds.
Okay.
But that agenda item is included, or that proposal is included within that discussion.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other comments? And I'm sorry if I've been pronouncing this incorrectly. Is this Member Chi?
Yes, that's correct. Thanks. And I'd like to also include in the future discussion to defend and expand Free City and what are openings and opportunities to do so as it reflects the objectives of the committee. So yeah. And then also garnering participation of like youth to understand what like the Free City program is, so as to better make use of the program too. And looking at, and I agree with like also maybe like research and demographics as a topic, so as to see which groups are still not in the scope of like currently benefiting from Free City, but again, back to the seeking like opportunities of how we can still continue to defend and expand this program too.
And so the comments for right now are for the minutes and approval of minutes. We'll definitely take these down in our notes and we can include them in our agenda item for future agenda items, and we'll be taking notes on these requests for information as part of that as well. And we'll also be looking through the past minutes on kind of past proposed agenda items to include in here and past information requests. And we will consolidate them and present them for the committee. I just wanted to note that Chair Davila is here. It's okay, maybe we can take a minute for Chair Davila to just introduce herself, and then she'll be helping us facilitate the remainder of the meeting. Chair Davila, we're on item of reviewing and approving the January 2022 minutes.
Okay, thank you. And hello, everybody. This is my first meeting here, and I just got the link to get in, so I'm looking forward to it. I see some names that I already know, and I guess some that I will be meeting in the future, but I'm really excited to be on this committee, so thank you very much.
Great. So I think unless there are no other comments, I'll give it a second here. Okay, we'll move to public comments. Anthony, are there any speakers in the queue?
There are no speakers in the queue.
I see none. Public comments are closed. Chair Davila, we're going to need you to help us facilitate the remainder of this meeting. So I think this is you'll see in the facilitator's agenda. This is where you ask for the motion to approve the January 2022 minutes.
Oh, so already, huh?
Yes.
I just got here.
Got here just in time. Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the January 22 minutes?
Chair Davila, this is Lisa Cooper Wilkins. I move that we adopt the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, great. All those in favor? I'm assuming we don't need a roll count.
Unfortunately, we do.
Okay. And will you take that?
Yes.
Okay,
We'll now take a vote to approve the adoption of minutes. Chair Mariano is absent. Chair Davila.
Abstain.
Chair Hatfield. Or Member Hatfield. Member Chi.
Yes.
Member Campos.
Yes.
Member Mar.
Yes.
Member Fong.
Yes.
Member Kwok.
Yes.
Member Sue is absent. Member Wilkins.
Yes.
Member Messer.
Oh, yes.
Member Brody.
Yes.
Member Wu.
Yes.
Member Ford.
Yes.
Member Villalobos. And the motion passes. So Chair Davila, we're moving into the next item.
Which is
Free City College Fall 2021 update.
okay. Let me get there. Okay. That's Dr. Lisa Cooper Wilkins. Can you now share your updates? And then I'll open the floor for questions after the presentation. Is there any public comment on this item?
We'll do that after the presentation.
Okay.
Is it okay if I share my screen to do it?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay, great. Is everybody seeing that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to share an update about the fall 2021 Free City College timeframe. I did at this time want to note the question came up previously. I have been asked by the Chancellor to be the point of contact for the Free City program. So just wanted to make that clear. and I appreciate being able to serve on the Oversight Committee. And so really quickly today, what we'll be covering is just providing some data to the Oversight Committee about program participation in the fall, as well as enrollment metrics. I've asked in the audience, we have our lead representative from our Office of Institutional Research, Liz Learson, in the audience in case there are more in-depth questions that you have about the data that's being presented. Likewise, I've asked our bursar, Rebecca Chavez, is also in the audience in case there's more questions about the enrollment metrics and the funding allocations to date. I do have some important considerations. I think someone mentioned student fees. So some notes about some changes that will impact the way students experience fees and may the need to repay them when their enrollment changes. And then just a future agenda item that has been mentioned previously and just providing some detail regarding that. And then obviously time for questions. So the first slide, I know I don't usually like busy slides, but it was the easiest way to present this information that was provided to us. And it's based on a report that was just run recently prior to submitting this as an item for today that shares the information about the number of students who received the Free City waiver in the fall. The 7,305 number represents the students who receive that waiver, the dollar amount associated with that number of students. So far to date, the amount of Free City that has been repaid, and again, any student who drops below their original enrollment would need to typically repay those fees, and I'll talk about that caveat in a second. Also, students who received the grant and then the total amount that was expended there. There's also the students who the reflection of the students who did not receive Free City. And then it just gives you the total number of students, our head count for the fall semester. Again, that includes those students who did not participate in Free City. I'll just give you a second to digest that again. I know there's a lot of information on the slide, including the number of units that those 7,305 students were enrolled in total, the total number of units that students dropped. And as of the fall semester, the executive order issued by our state chancellor's office allowing for excused withdrawals is reflected here in that reference to excused units. And again, the information related to the Free City grant amounts that were issued. And then I will go ahead and move to our next slide, which provides information about, again, enrollment metrics, just to see a little bit more of a breakdown. The average amount of the Free City that is applied based on units. And so the billed units average was 7.8 units. The earned student average was 6.7 units in the fall. So again, students dropped some of their units throughout the semester. So students with drop or withdrawal, there were 1,730 students who dropped at some point, some of their units, at least one or more units. How many full-time students who were enrolled at 12 units or more for the fall semester that received the enrollment waiver. So 1,264 students. And again, the information about the grants and the number of students who received the grants what their average enrollment was initially, what their earned units were at the end. Yes.
Do you want to take questions now during your presentation, or do you prefer to wait till the end?
Can we wait till the end and then
That's fine
like
with
I
me.
said, okay.
But if you
And-
want to put your hands up in a queue, that would be fine too. If you want to put, because it'll show up in my screen then, and I can take them in order. Thank you.
And then the caveat that I mentioned is every student is noticed that if they do drop units if they do drop any units after their initial enrollment, that they would be subject to having to repay fees. Although during COVID, there was an executive order by our state chancellor's office that relaxed those requirements for students to, one, have excused withdrawals, and also encouraging much more liberal stance on, repayment of fees and refunds. That executive order ended as of the fall 2021 semester. So starting this spring 2022 semester, students who withdraw from classes will be subject to the full repayment of their fees. I guess unless there is a different decision made by this committee. Students who receive just as a point of reference, who receive what is called the California Community College Promise Grant, formerly known as the BOG fee waiver, they are not required to repay fees. And so there is going to be some confusion on the part of students who have used the FAFSA to apply for other aid, that there is this expectation about repayment of fees for one program versus the other. So we will need to be clear in the communications on those expectation of repayment of fees. And again, resuming the requirement to repay fees for dropping courses does resume for this semester. And then just the future agenda item that we talked about was the RP group presentation regarding the equity project that they are working on behalf of the Free City program. They are already engaged in work, working really closely with staff at City College, including our institutional research office, gathering data and information to create the analysis about the program. With the goal of being able to summarize some key opportunities for consideration around how the Free City program could have a potential greater equity impact and closing of achievement gap for students, and that they could also propose some considerations that would align these program objectives with the goals and activities of our college's student equity and achievement program. And so that project is underway and would like to bring that back as a future agenda item for this oversight committee's consideration. And now
we have questions. Okay, let's see if there's a queue. It looks like,
and I wonder if I can ask this question now. Like I said, I do have Liz Learison is in the audience, and so is Rebecca Chavez, in case there are questions that they need to help support responding to. Is there a way to bring them over temporarily as panelists?
I'd have to ask Jay about that.
Yeah, we can do that.
Thank you, Anthony.
I see them both, I think, now. Thank you. All right, and it looks like
yeah, it looks like we have
several
Connie
questions.
Ford first. Hello, Connie. How are you? I think you're still muted. There you go.
Okay. So thank you, Dr. Wilkins. I guess I have two questions, and one is very simple. If you are the contact, I'm the community representative for the committee. So I'm associated with Free City College, but on behalf of lots of different people. So I don't have your contact information or how to reach you. So maybe you could put that in the chat. That'd be great. Thank you. And the other is I'm the person also, and there's others who are really concerned about the fees and the fee structure and how it's working for Free City College students. I can tell you lots of anecdotes, which I'm sure you could as well, of people having to drop out, of school during COVID in particular because of family and own personal needs. And so, and then the sort of the punishing part of fees, of course, is when you have to pay it, when it comes back and you have to pay it, it's really hard too, because there's so many people, especially with special needs, to pay it back. So I guess what I've never seen, and maybe this is my ignorance, but I've never seen a study that says that fees really, whatever, help keep students honest and go to school and complete the units as opposed to not charging them fees. That's one question. If they're, or if fees really do what they're supposed to do, other than really deter and frustrate people who are really low income or no income trying to make it through City College. And then so I just, if there's studies by the college or by something, it would really, I think, be interesting to see that they're working, that they work like everybody thinks they should. Or if they're not working, then we should consider them, and how many students during COVID with Free City College really took advantage of the waiver that they had. And are there still students who are out there who didn't take advantage of the waiver because of the state regulations and still suffering with outstanding fees?
Those were a lot of questions.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sort of hungry for them.
I'll just try generally to say that I know that there have been studies sometimes, and I'm going to let Liz jump in here because it's mentioning studies, that there are studies that other institutions I know have done sometimes to figure out what threshold of fees sometimes might just be enough of a deterrent, right? Not to come back, but not enough of a financial burden for the institution to figure out a way to resolve in order to allow a student to continue. And I think those have been done in a couple of ways, both the amount of money and then the number of units that the students might be close to, say, finishing a particular degree or certificate program. So I know that that kind of work has happened across the state at many institutions. Still have not been here long enough to know that if that's been a study that we've done here, which is what I might ask Liz to address at this point. And then I think I have a couple of comments about your other parts of your question as well.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Just really quickly, we have not, and it's an issue. So the MOU has changed, and we don't have enough years of a stable format to really be able to know anything. Yeah, right. It changed a little bit, and when it changes, then the data change, and we can't look longitudinally at something like that. But we do, we've found there, exactly like Dr. Cooper-Wilkin said, there are many other community colleges that have looked at this, and I am happy to try to curate some things to send. What was I also thinking? I mean, in the California community college system, we don't get to decide what the amount of fees are, right? Yeah. So that's a thing. It's not up to us. It's just mandated. So it's a little bit different. So that's a caveat, right?
Yeah, for resident fees, yeah.
Yeah, for resident fees, right.
I think can I intercede here, because I'm not sure if we got off the topic, because I think the question, and correct me if I'm wrong, Connie, the question is how are the fees affecting students continuing on, and would waiving those fees for classes?
Mm-hmm. Right. And that was sort of how I started, is that some institutions have looked at that and figured out a threshold, right? Mm-hmm. Of here's about the amount of funding that both would be a deterrent for a student to continue, but also not be sort of financially detrimental for the institution to absorb through a program like this, to support a student finishing like a degree or certificate, like a window of how many units they might be, from completing something. So there have been variations of studies like what Connie has asked about that have been done at other institutions to support student success.
Yeah, we
So
may want to put this on the agenda again so that we can revisit this, but I see there's 2 more people in the queue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Connie. Elisa Messer?
I just wanted to ask, I know that member Wu had his hand up earlier, and I want to make sure we're not missing him. No.
You're good. Yeah. My question was if you wanted to wait till the end to wait for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Cooper-Wilkins, because I think that this is a conversation that people have been asking to have for a while, and it's something that came up in the annual report from a couple of years ago. It was something that our previous chair, Chanel Williams, had raised repeatedly as a concern, this idea of outstanding fees and what kind of impact does it have. You said something so crucial that I don't think I think I had forgotten, actually. And so I want to make sure that we don't miss it, which is how the BOG waiver, or the former BOG waiver, Board of Governors waiver, deals with fees, which is that students don't need to pay them back. Now, when Free City was created, there was not an assumption that students would need to pay outstanding fees back if a student dropped a course. However, there was something that was modeled largely off the BOG waiver, but there was something different. Or there were a couple of things different from the BOG waiver, and one of them was that that we were not there was not an end to when you could, there wasn't only a certain number of units,
right.
And there wasn't a financial means test to
right.
simplify things, and then
right.
also that that there was not a. Oh, my mind just went out on me. I'm so sorry. There was not this, the idea that if you dropped below a certain GPA, you would lose your ability to get a fee waiver. So in a way, it was much more permissive, and for good reasons. And in fact, at the time that Free City, before it was implemented, there was some excitement from some of the folks in financial aid about the fact that we definitely had students who were being kicked off of the BOG who nonetheless really wanted to get there, and we wanted to give them more chances, and that this was really going to help them. So it's not that we're exactly like the BOG, but it is, I feel like there's something really important about noticing that there's not this other thing, because students really are surprised when even though it's not that we don't tell them, of course we tell them, it's not the main thing. When you take a class, you're not thinking, oh, maybe I'm just not going to take it, or what's going to, our students come into most of our classes, the vast majority really dedicate, like, this is it. I'm taking a college class.
Right.
They're not thinking about how hard or what's going to, or that they're going to lose a family member to COVID in the middle of the, these are not. So I guess I wanted to take this as an opportunity to back up and sort of use that to reframe the conversation, because it's a conversation we haven't been able to have and sort of track. And I really appreciate the numbers, but also the perspective that you provided in doing that. So thank you.
Thank you. Calvin Kwok?
Yeah, I just have a quick question on if there's also any way to look at and the enrollment data based on or by program, and seeing which programs in particular have high enrollments by Free City College students, and if there's any way to basically ensure that there's enough sections in those programs to meet those students' demands.
So my understanding is that the presentation that you get in the spring, of being again new to this, spring, we are in the presentation about spring data will be a bit more comprehensive in the sort of reflection of information that can be shared, but I want Liz to respond to how possible it is to kind of get down to program level data.
Yeah, thank you. Of course, yes, this is this is a great question, and the very short answer is we cannot provide that. But the reason, I mean, I find sort of more interesting and more representative of what community colleges sort of are to communities, right? Students don't have to know what they're doing when they come through the door. So we don't have, it's not like a 4-year where you have to declare a major. Students can just come take classes with us. So when they take that biology class, I don't know whether they're in a bio AST program or whether they're brushing up their skills for to do a healthcare career change. So we don't have students assigned to programs the way that you do in a 4-year. It's just, we just have a more open policy. And so that means that we have less data.
Okay, it looks like there's another person. Are you finished with your question, Mr. Kwok?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes,
okay,
thank
great.
you.
Great question, by the way. Tyler Wu?
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Wilkins, I'm super curious, given that you're new to the college and that you're seeing similar numbers for the first time, just like us, what your initial reactions are, and if you have any key takeaways that you think would be good for this group to really pull and pick out from.
I think the thing that I was most struck by, not necessarily about the numbers, was just being excited about this opportunity to think about intentional equity strategies that will really help this program, I think, do some of what it seems like most promise programs are intended to do, which is to help close achievement gaps, particularly for students with financial constraints to attending college. So I will be really interested in hearing a bit more from the RP group about where those opportunities rest. Also really interested in, I really appreciated Alyssa Messer's comments about sort of the differences in financial aid products that are available to our students, and how we might think about ways that we help students maximize leveraging, all that is available to them, as it becomes even clearer to us that our students' basic needs are just so extreme, but also so varied, right? So anything that we can do to help leverage as much, financial support as possible. So those would be probably like sort of just my key, sort of takeaways or ahas so far.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that has a question? Oh, Elisa. Oh, I see your hand there.
But only if everybody else is gone.
Yeah, everybody else has.
2 quick other questions. One is just, do we understand why those numbers say that we have more City College students who are not using Free City than who are? That's surprising. It seems like it represents a change in demographics. So that's one thing. And then the other is just, when is the RP report expected to be completed? Because that's exciting news and work.
Right now, the timeline that had been shared with the RP group, and based on the work that they've already started, it is anticipated that they will be done by the end of the spring semester. So my hope is that it lines up with being able to have a presentation at our next Oversight Committee meeting. Not 1,000% sure when that is, but I think it will align with that occurring. They would be finished with the reporting just before that. And then you had a question about sort of the utility of the program. And I don't know, I want to defer to Liz too, if we have done any of the sort of qualitative sort of assessment of with Free City students, to hear from some of them about why they use the program, or why some of the students who don't take advantage of utilizing it, if it's about location, where they're from, where they're residents of, like that kind of thing.
I mean, I think I don't know, it probably, and now that we've been living in this time for these COVID times for a while now, it sounds a little silly, but it really, I don't know, the question about demographics, like, yes, which students are continuing to take classes with us during this time, they're definitely different students, and exactly how they are different and which students has literally changed every single semester since COVID, because the environment has been
So fluid.
right changing
Mhm.
like crazy.
Mhm.
So I'm really cautious about I can tell you which students we have and which students we don't, but I don't know what it means, because it's just too many variables right now. Just too much stuff changing. So if that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
I do want to note that we have about 40 minutes left and a few items in the agenda that we'll have to get through.
Okay, we have one more question now from Supervisor Moore.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for that update, Jay.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Dr. Cooper Wilkins, for this update and your engagement with us on Free City. I just had a pretty quick, simple question. I was curious what the enrollment or how the fall enrollment looks like. It was about 19,000 students total, how that compares to the prior 2 years, fall of 2020. I know that was a major pandemic impact semester, but fall of 2019, I'm just curious. And then I'm also curious, like, what the college is projecting for future in the coming year, this coming fall, for enrollment.
Great questions. Again, my observation has been so far, we have what we're calling a student support strategies ad hoc committee that had been formed last year to take a look specifically at how we can try to start to improve enrollment, with the thought of making an impact with students we may have lost during the pandemic, right? And so really trying to think about some strategies there. But one of the things that the committee had been engaged with through our institutional research office was some data that has shown somewhat of a decline over time. So to your point, it would be a decline in enrollment from last fall, spring, and a bit of a decline again this past fall semester. And obviously a little too early to tell for spring, but still seeing some decline. So I think, to Liz's point earlier, the variables just continue to change over the course of the pandemic, and whether or not people are feeling like they have to work more or have to care for family members more. We don't know all of the various reasons why, or afraid to come and take classes in person. It is a different, experience taking classes online. So there's so many variables. One of the things we might be able to share in a future meeting, and again, we probably have to figure out, and I don't know if Liz always can check me on, with the possibility of how we can share data from some surveys we've done with students where we've asked them questions about their preferences on taking courses and maybe some of their experience through COVID. There have been a couple of studies done by the Institutional Research Office, and we're happy to share those in a future meeting.
Thank you. So it sounds like fall 2021, the enrollment was a little bit down even from fall 2020.
Yes.
I imagine that was significantly down from fall 2019. Is that...
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And which is the trend across the state, just to be clear. So it wasn't just unique to our institution, although there may be some differences in the percentage of the decline.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Moore. I think that is an interesting point that you just mentioned about how different it is from semester to semester. I've seen that myself, and I'm wondering if there is some way we can start collecting data now. I think now that things are leveling off more. Is that the plan for your office?
Liz, is there a plan to, now that we are sort of starting to come back, are we doing maybe capturing that data every semester so that we can continue to look at those trends?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's the work with the RP group to which, we've discussed with them, including a qualitative component, but in terms of sort of capturing data about who our students are and who is enrolling is, we don't have to like go out and do anything different. We just know, based on who's enrolling. Yeah. So we will have that certainly. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll just wait and see, and hopefully finally, like you say, things will level out, and then we can make some things about, some meaning out of it. What was the other thing? Oh, remember Mar asked about projections, and I think, I don't know, Dr. Cooper Wilkins, are there enrollment projections in the budget, in the proposed budget that went to the board?
I believe so.
Yeah, that would be where I would look for those. Yeah.
Okay. So that's something else that we can share.
Yeah. I would just add one other thing, and that is, you mentioned that the levels have been dropping across the state. It's a national trend also.
Oh, absolutely.
Across the country.
Mm-hmm.
And it's counterintuitive to what usually happens during an economic downturn. More people enroll in college then. So
absolutely,
we're all kind of puzzled by this and figuring out what to do. So are there any other questions? I think we need to move on. And I think, oh yes, I see Eileen Mariano's here now. Hi. It's the first time I've met a lot of people here. So I'm going to give it back to you now, Eileen.
And thank you, Liz and Rebecca, for joining us to answer questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes.
No, and Co-Chair Davila, thank you so much for filling in while I was out. I hope I'm jumping back into the right part of the agenda, but Jay, are there any public comments on this agenda item?
We are in the right part of the agenda. Anthony, are there any speakers in the queue?
There are no speakers in the queue.
Seeing none, public comment is closed.
Great. Moving on to our next agenda item, which is the controller presentation on free city funds and the reserve. We have invited the controller's office to present on free city funds and the reserves to help do some level setting with this committee, to refresh everyone's memories, and to bring new members up to speed. This will also help set up a discussion for our next item around use of any excess funds and reserves. Member Kwok, you may now share the controller's presentation.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm the new member on the committee since last meeting. I'm also a senior analyst in the budget and analysis division of the controller's office. Just a brief background. We are responsible for the city's financial planning and technical preparation of the budget, amongst other responsibilities, and the Free City College program, as well as its reserve, is they're among the items that we closely monitor and manage. And so we're here to present on the funding and the reserve, just kind of some updates, and to actually also provide some recap of kind of the prior year fundings, as well as looking ahead. Next slide, please. So the funding schedule based on the MOU, in the first year, we started off with 15 million in academic year 2019-20. and 15.7 million in academic year 2021. And then for the current year is 16.4 million. And then in the subsequent years, so years 4 through 10 is 16.4 million plus a CPI factor. Based on the current CPI forecast, which is what we use in the March update, the upcoming March update of the 5-year financial plan, we estimate that the funding to the program is around 16.8 and 16.9 million. I will note that these are currently estimate amounts for the funding. The final amount would be determined when we coordinate with DCYF to develop the budget for the upcoming year as well as subsequent years. Next slide, please. So just a couple of notes on the first year disbursements for the Free City College program. In October 2019, DCYF disbursed a total of 20.4 million to the Free City College program. As I mentioned previously, 15 million was for the first year based on the MOU, and 5.4 million was a one-time grant for past costs of the program. I wanted to emphasize that this amount is actually separate from the reserve, so it's not, it doesn't contribute to any like increases or decreases that occur in the reserve. And then you'll see a little table on the right side. It just kind of breaks down the details of what was dispersed, how we budgeted it, as well as the actuals, which is all the same. Next slide, please. So during the last meeting, the external auditor, Crow, discussed the audit results for the first annual audit that covered academic year 2019 and 2020. So just to recap those results and how that relates to the funding and the reserve. So in the first year, the Free City College program had 12.2 million in total spending for academic year 2019-20, of which 10.7 million was eligible spending and 1.5 million was ineligible spending. That 1.5 million was returned to the reserve. And then, as you remember, the first year there was 15 million in the total baseline funding. And so if we deduct the total spending of 12.2 million, we have 2.8 million, which was unspent. And so if we added that up, then a total of 4.3 million was returned to the reserve. And on the table on the right side, you'll kind of see again just the breakdown of the eligible and ineligible spending that was found in the audit, as well as the unspent funds and the total return to reserve. Next slide, please. So just a couple of notes on the reserve mechanics. The reserve was initially funded at $2 million to support any additional Free City College program associated expenditures, particularly when this program is new and it's starting up. So on the deposit side, as outlined in the MOU in years 1 through 4, the full amount of unspent funds and ineligible spending as determined by the annual audit would be returned to the reserve. And then in years 5 through 10, half of the unspent funds and ineligible spending would be deposited to the reserve up to the cap, and the other half would be returned to the city's general fund. And the cap is equal to 50% of the future year funding. on the withdrawal side, withdrawals can be appropriated to support any Free City College program costs as outlined in the admin code and the MOU agreement. And they're also subject to the authority of the mayor and the board to make any appropriations. Next slide, please. And so to kind of summarize the current reserve level, as of academic year 21-22, the reserve fund level is 5.3 million. And so again, as I mentioned previously, it started out with 2 million. That was a carryover from prior MOU. And 4.3 million was reserved from the unspent funds and eligible spending. And the balance as of the last academic year 2021, was 6.3 million. And then in academic year 21-22, 1 million of the reserve was appropriated in the budget, and that brought the ending balance to 5.3 million. And that actually covers my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for the presentation, Member Kwok. Members, I will now open the floor for any questions or comments about this presentation. Supervisor Mark.
Thank you. And thanks for the presentation, Mr. Kwok. Really helpful to see the numbers. I just had a question or a few questions. So on this slide here, you're not really showing any increase in the reserve in 21-22 academic year, right? So I'm just curious about that, because why, yeah, and also I have a question about the $1 million withdrawal, actually, but I would expect that the reserve would have increased in 21-22 because the allocation increased, and also sounds like the enrollment declined. So the program costs I would have thought would have declined. And then you're not showing any increase in the projected ending balance of the reserve looking ahead in future years. So I was just curious about that.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for the question. So as outlined in the MOU, so any increases in, at least based on my current understanding, any increases in the reserve currently is based on any funds that are that haven't been spent yet. So as I mentioned earlier, the difference between the full funding versus the total spending that was found in the annual audit. And then as well as any ineligible spending that was found in the audit. And so those are basically what contributes to any like increases in the reserve at the moment. And so yes, you're seeing that basically there's no increase, or like the main increase is basically was from academic year 2021 from the unspent funds and the ineligible spending. And just also a note is that the prior year audit for academic year 20 through 21, that audit is currently underway. So there's no like final amounts as to unspent funding and ineligible spending. there's no final amounts yet that would have contributed to any new increases to the reserve yet.
Mhm. So yeah, thanks. So it sounds like my question about the ending balance in year 3, academic year 2021 being 5.3 million, or basically the same as a prior year. And then it's basically the same amount looking ahead for the next, I don't know how many years, 7 years. That's just because you're not saying that that's the projection, right? You're just saying that we don't know. So
yeah, there's no it would be contingent upon the final amount of unspent funds and ineligible spending from each annual audit to determine any increases in the reserve in subsequent years.
yeah, thanks. And then I'm sorry, just to be so focused on this, but when the audit is done for the 2021 academic year, then it'll be clear how much unspent funds there were that would then be added to the reserve, right?
Yes, correct. And also any ineligible spending that needs to be returned back to the reserve as well. Yes.
And would you expect that there would be some unspent funds, at least? I'm not sure about the ineligible spending, but unspent funds in the academic year 2021, given that the amount of the allocation increased, and also it sounds like the enrollment decreased.
I would think there may be unspent funds, but then again, I would we would have to wait for the final audit results.
And when will we get that? Or when's that projected?
I would have to get back to the committee on that. I know that it's underway, but I would think the audit would probably be completed later in the calendar year. But I would ask about that and bring it back to the committee if I have any updates.
Great. And then I guess I just had one other question. I'm sorry. And it's more for Director Sue about the $1 million withdrawal from the reserve fund. And I was just wanted to see if you could explain that. That was a bit of a surprise.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor Mar, for the question. At this moment in time, we are still working with the Controller's Office and the Mayor's Budget Office to have some clearer visibility into this. Our understanding is that this appropriation of $1 million was to go towards an add back for the WRF model that Supervisor Mar, you championed to support City College. And so perhaps that was where the appropriation, well, we know that was the appropriation for the $1 million to go towards WRF for the add back. Now, we just need to understand a little bit more about the mechanism that allowed this to happen. And I don't know if we have clarity on this. I don't know if the Controller's Office is able to speak about this, or I can get back to the committee with a little bit more clarity.
Yeah, thank you, Director Sue. Would appreciate, you looking into it. That, I mean, as a supervisor that sponsored the Workforce Education and Recovery Fund and advocated for that $1 million to be included in the budget, it was not my understanding that was going to come from the Free City Reserve, and that should come. It was my understanding, and this is in the final budget negotiations. between the board and the mayor that it was going to come out of the general fund as a citywide add back. But yeah, so I would like to follow up with you in the controller's office just to clarify that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Marr. Member Messer?
Yeah, I guess I was wondering about that $1 million as well. So we've got some clarity that we don't have clarity now about that $1 million coming out of the reserve. And as I read the discussion that we're going to be looking at as I previewed it before the meeting, putting it towards another program actually is not an eligible use of the reserve. So I guess I just want to flag that as being really concerning, that it turns out that there's $1 million that moved around and out of the reserve for Free City at the moment. It doesn't, yeah, that seems very surprising, and I'm echoing Supervisor Marr's concern. I also just want us to imagine, because of course, this particular information, and thank you, we've been asking for information about the reserves, and this is really clear, sort of, except for those notes, sort of where we're at. And of course, we do need to imagine into the 2022 or the 21-22 year, which isn't over yet, but sort of imagining that the likelihood is that there will be as much as there was last year moving into the reserve, given that given the information that we just got from Dr. Cooper Williams about current enrollment and who's availing themselves of Free City, and just what we know about enrollment at the college in general. So it's a back of the napkin thing, but it seems to me really likely that we'll have significant reserves coming through at the end of this year, and that should be part of our discussion going forward into the next agenda items.
Thank you, Member Messer. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay. Are there any public comments?
I think there are the speakers in the queue.
There are no speakers in the queue.
Seeing none, public comment is closed.
Great. Moving on to the next agenda item, item 7. I just want to do a time check. We've got about 10 minutes left. So I would propose that we move through this next agenda items for 10 minutes, and then we'll move whatever agenda items or whatever discussion we did not get to the next meeting. But the next agenda item is discussion of the use of Free City funds. And we've invited DCYF to give a presentation around approaches towards the use of the reserve funds that we were all just talking about. And we've asked DCYF to share ideas for uses of the funds that have been raised by members of this committee in the past. And I just want to, remind everybody, the intent today is to begin the discussion on the uses of these excess funds. And we plan to use a future meeting to take a vote on recommendations for those fund uses. But today we want to first discuss principles around the use of reserve funds and see if we can come to agreement around those principles. We then wanted to put the ideas for uses in front of everyone for discussion, to give members a chance to include any other options that have not been previously discussed. So DCYF, if you would like to begin the presentation.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, committee members. Jay Liao with DCYF. So what we're hoping to do today was supplement the controller office's presentation. To supplement the controller's office presentation on the mechanics of funding with some background on eligible uses. and some principles around the use of reserve funds, and to consolidate the information that we have around those proposed uses for this fund that have come from the committee. So the list of proposed uses is to the best of our knowledge and information gathering to date, so it may not be complete lists. Since there is no vote today, there is opportunity to add to this list for consideration. So next slide, please. We want to start this with informing the committee on the language in the MOU on the reserve fund eligible uses. So this comes from Appendix B of the MOU that the CSF may use excess funds remaining in the annual allocation after fully funding enrollment fees and grants to cover administrative costs associated with the Free City College program with DCYF's approval. These include, but are not limited to, program manager, financial aid counselors, AB 540, dream coordinator or counselor, piloting evidence-based interventions to improve student equity outcomes, a data analyst, IT systems upgrades, increased staff hours for financial aid counselors or data analysts, or the incorporation of evidence-based methods to improve state and federal applications uptake. Next slide. So those were just items that were listed by the MOU. I would assume those were potential uses discussed during the development of the MOU, but the uses aren't limited to just that list, just to be clear. So we want to talk a bit about reserve fund use parameters. The first two bullets here are from the MOU as well. Enrollment fees and grants related to Free City must first be fully funded before reserve funds are used for other programs or uses. Any use of reserve funds must be associated with Free City with DCYF approval. I want to note here that this second bullet is in relation to disbursement of funds because we have a new administration in City College, and because this committee has been on pause for so long, we do need to take some time to reestablish some of the processes, not just for the use of reserves funds, but noted here is the annual report, which has some recommendations around some of those processes and the information that should be shared in order to administer this program. So what we would propose is that we would work with City College outside of the committee to determine these processes, and we would be happy to present to the committee what those processes look like and what kind of information will be shared. The next on parameters on reserve fund use, we just want to share some best practices. The funds are limited, so a few general guiding parameters might help with some of your decision making. So mainly is that the program or use of funds should be fiscally sustainable. So one-time uses or short-term uses are usually best use of reserve funds. Ongoing uses will need to be sustainable. And then the last point here is that programs should be properly resourced with infrastructure and support to implement successfully. Next slide. The next couple slides are really just around the proposed uses. In this slide, we just kind of consolidated, or we categorized the various proposed uses into general goals. So the goals that have come up are financial support, equity, bolstering enrollment and retention, lifelong learning, recovery of City College students from the pandemic, supporting undocumented students, and addressing recommendations from the annual report, which I mentioned we may be able to do kind of on the back end. Next slide, please. So these are the things that I mentioned that we've, to the best of our knowledge, are things that have been proposed from this committee. First, under financial support is administrative support for financial aid, cadres of financial literacy and financial educational workshops. So this is extending invitations to those workshops to Free City College students, outreach to Free City College students, and providing information on other support services available. Relief of outstanding fees. Under equity, equity analysis or audit of Free City, and then building an equity framework around Free City, particularly on how to help students persist and succeed. This is building a framework that would increase more full-time students, provide more wraparound supports that will increase the likelihood of finishing degrees. Next is bolstering enrollment retention. Pilot incentives have come up, stipends to students for retention, and then also supporting college and career readiness enrollment. Lifelong learning, this is around older adults, building older adult skills and serving the broader community as well. Recovery of city college students from the pandemic has come up, and then support for undocumented students without details on kind of what those programs might be, but just kind of as general goals. And that is it for our presentation.
Thank you, Jay. Chair Davila.
Thank you for the presentation. I actually had a question about, I saw you had financial aid counselors, and I think that's a great idea, but what about academic counselors? That was one question. And then the other question I had was, can you go back to the slide right before that? Yeah. Okay. I don't know where it was, but there is a stipend for completion. And would that be based on a number of units?
I don't, so we pulled these from the notes. I don't think there were details. I think these were just kind of discussion of proposed uses. So there weren't really details about what those programs might look like. So I think these are more just kind of conceptual. But we can certainly add academic counselors as a proposed use.
And I was also wondering about staff, if we could have more enrollment and registration staff. Would that be an eligible use?
I think if it's related to Free City, but I would have to look into that and follow up.
Okay. And what about dual enrollment to support the structure of that, putting it in all our high schools?
Sorry, can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Dual enrollment is students, and in some communities, they're actually doing this where a student will graduate from high school with a year or two of community college completed. So they're in high school, but they're getting college credit for their classes.
Got it. I'm not sure, but we can definitely look into like what's eligible or not. I would imagine that might be, but we'll keep it on the list, and then as the committee deliberates, we can advise on what is and isn't eligible.
Thank you.
Hey, I want to do a time check. It is 5 o'clock. And so I want to note that as of right now, we are on agenda item number 8 of this meeting's agenda. And I think we'll have to move to push the rest of the agenda items to the next meeting. So I'll note that we did not hear from all of our committee members. We did not get a chance for public comment on this agenda item, and we didn't get to our last agenda item either. So we'll make sure to that those are on the agenda for next time. And does that, Jay, does that seem like the next step?
That sounds good.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay. Well, members, thank you so much for a fruitful discussion. We've been taking notes on not only what we didn't get to today, but also next agenda items for next time. I see there are lots of hands raised. But in the meantime, our final item is adjournment. Noted for the record, the meeting is adjourned at 5:01 p.m.
What about all the people in the queue? Oh, next time?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly still have to do committee discussion on this issue and also public comment on this issue. So I would suggest that maybe we can put this right at the top of the agenda for next time.
And when is the next time? I'm new here, so I can ask.
Yeah.
What we need to discuss.
Okay, do we want to discuss that now? It might be easier for us to do that offline, and then we can make sure that everybody has that information. I know that there's a lot of urgency to meet frequently though, and that we've shared that in the past. So we'll make sure that we are able to set up a meeting in due time.
Could we at least name a target amount of time that we're shooting for from DCYF and the rest of the committee?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm thinking June.
My guess is that folks would want to try and meet before then, and I know that everybody has very busy schedules. So, but I know that there's a lot of urgency to meet likely before June.
Okay, that'd be great. I didn't even want to say May because I thought you wouldn't have the capacity for that.
Well, when does the reserve fund decision need to be made? Because that would require us to meet, wouldn't it?
Through the chair, this is Maria. I don't think we will be hitting the reserve fund cap by this year. Is that correct, Jay?
Yeah, so the cap doesn't take effect until the 5th year. So we have a little bit of a runway. You know, the decision can be, or doesn't have to be immediate.
So we still have some time. I definitely see a lot of hands still on, and I know that we did call for adjournment. I wonder, could we just allow the members to make the comments, and then we can record those comments, and then we can continue the meeting in June, and then we'll develop a cadence after that.
Yes, absolutely. And also, I've also been told that we have to open public comment. So we will also do that as well. So I see 4 members with their hands up. So maybe we can go through those 4. Of course, we'll be mindful of time. And thank you everybody for being willing to just finish this out. And then we'll open up for public comment as well, if that works for folks. So first, let's go to Member Ford.
Good answer. Mine will be very quick. Thank you, Chair Mayor Eileen. I just would like to request that we have, if possible, a report at our next meeting around outstanding fees. So this is outstanding fees from Free City College students over the last couple of years, so that we know what we're talking about in terms of discussing this particular issue. So how much do we have? How many outstanding fees do we have? That's all I need to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Member Ford. Member Key.
I think also really quick, thanks everyone for a lively discussion this afternoon. I'd also want to request if we could meet earlier than June, and also put in the agenda, revisit the topic of demographics and looking at how to expand Free City, but also revisiting the topic of the reserves that was moved around. And also if it's possible to have subcommittees to address some of the action items so that work can move forward between the different Free City Committee meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Messer.
I agree about trying to meet sooner rather than later. I'm sure no one's surprised to hear me say that. I do. I thought this was a great discussion today, and I feel like we got to some things we've been hoping to discuss for a long time. And the fact that we're, so out of time is a reflection of that. I want to really encourage people to look at the Free City annual report, because the 5 recommendations that are at the end are all completely relevant to this. And so I just put the link to DCYF's website with the published report, just as a reminder of what's there. It's on page 31. And thank you, everybody, really a lot for the continued commitment. And thank you to DCYF and Jay, who it's been lovely to have back, and our new members as well.
Thank you very much. Member Fong.
Thank you. Well, I second Chair Davala's request for dual enrollment to be included in the uses of reserve, if that's allowable. I have a separate comment that's unrelated to dual enrollment. And I was wondering if any of the reserves, which might be sent back to the city, could be used for a one-time reimbursement to SFUSD for the allowable uses in the MOU. SFUSD performs services for Free City participants, such as we pay for financial aid counselors and dream counselors, and we have pilot interventions for equity for many of City College's incoming students. I would estimate 20 to 25% of City College's, we probably have about 4,000 new students annually, and they are coming from SFUSD as from high school seniors to incoming freshmen. So, and this was especially true, our counseling occurred even heightened due to the pandemic, and we wanted to reduce the severity of the declining enrollment. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment. Jay, are there any public comments?
Anthony, is there anyone in the queue?
There are no speakers in the queue.
Seeing none, public comment is closed.
Thank you, Jay. And thank you, everybody, for, again, the fruitful discussion, bearing with us as we went over time. And I know there's a lot more discussion ahead. I heard a bunch of folks, wanting to meet before June. Maybe we can shoot for an end of April date. I do want to be thoughtful around, there are a bunch of members. We are coordinating a lot of schedules. Folks need to go back and gather information, and that there's urgency to meet again. So maybe we can shoot for that time, and we'll find a time that works for us somewhere around then. Great. Now our final item this time is adjournment. So please noted for the record, the meeting is adjourned at 5:09 p.m.
Thank you.